The revolution is real, it's live, and as some comrades say, it's lit, right? Lit. The revolution is lit.
Uhuru Comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday Study featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is Yeshitela Anai, Director of Agitation and Propaganda for the African People's Socialist Party, as well as your MC for this morning. Today's study is a continuation of the discussion on reparations to African people, where we will be reading from the book Reparations Now, an abbreviated report from the International Tribunal on Reparations for Black People in the U.S., edited by Chairman Omali Yeshitela in 1983, pages 101 through 120. We continue this discussion in a period where reparations is a topic you can no longer avoid. We're living in an era where if you're opposed to reparations, you are increasingly becoming the odd one out. That is undoubtedly due to the work of our party over the last 4 decades, making reparations a household word and reality. Our case for reparations has been made. The study has been done. Not for the U.S. government to agree or pass judgment on, but for the people to decide, to put this government on trial, to take back what has been stolen from us. Before I introduce Chairman Omali Yeshitela to take us through this study, I want to briefly announce that Omali Taught Me broadcasts Sundays on Black Power 96.3 FM, a project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund. Black Power 96 is in its July member fund drive, raising resources to stay on the air and continue growing. This community-funded radio station is not just explaining the world, but changing it. Each show on the station has a fundraising goal, and Omali Taught Me has a goal this morning as well. During the show, we're calling on you to donate at blackpower96.org/donate and put Omali Taught Me in the comments to contribute to this show's $2,000 fundraising goal. I am deeply honored now to introduce my leadership, the one who made reparations a revolutionary demand and practice and took the reparations struggle out of the chambers of the U.S. government to put it down on the ground into the hands of the people, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru, brothers and sisters and comrades, we don't do this often enough. That is to say, we don't express appreciation to Black Power 96.3 FM, the radio station in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's the main platform that we use to make this study occur. Our presentation, our study, is actually a part of the programming of Black Power 96.3. And as has been stated, Black Power 96.3 itself is a project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, which is a nonprofit organization that has a specific mission related to dealing with what we characterize as the disparities in health, education, justice, and what have you that African people experience as compared to white people or North Americans or the colonizer population. And this is an important platform. And I'm hoping that those of you who are participating in this study will appreciate it enough to make a contribution to Black Power 96.3 to help this radio station not only stay on the air. You can imagine the significance of this study for you wherever you are participating in this study, from wherever you're participating, and to imagine that a local radio station is producing this kind of discussion and the significance that has for what it is that we do. So those of you who are participating in this study also have an opportunity to contribute to the success of Black Power 96.3, the radio station that really attempts to not only explain the world, but to change the world. And we have a fundraising goal for the month of July of $7,000. That is to say, the Black Power 96.3. And the goal for this show, this program, Omali taught me, is $2,000. But that's not very much. In fact, we assume that it's possible for us to get the entire $7,000 from this show alone. It, of course, requires your participation, and which would be a statement of how and whether you appreciate Omali taught me as something that's beneficial not only to you, but to Africans and people in general. So there are ways that you can donate and pledge. You can go to blackpower96.org/donate. You can call 1-888-979-BP96. That's 1-888-979-2796. Let us know your pledge on the chat on YouTube or Facebook. When you donate, you will receive a membership card, because this is July member drive for the station. So you get a Black Power 96.3 membership card. They will include Black Power 96 swag, some swag depending on your membership level. Everybody will get a bumper sticker. $20 donation will get you a new Black Power 96 cooling headband. All of you who are working out so seriously, being healthy, staying healthy, getting healthy, will have your Black Power 96 cooling headband as you run your laps, bicycle, however long you do that, and wherever you go, even in your favorite gym where you are squatting, whatever it is you squat. You can become a sustaining monthly member at $5 per month or higher. And we will thank you with a Black Power 96 drawstring bag. Can't beat that with a stick. You can have your Black Power 96 drawstring bag. You can borrow your friend's cooling headband. You can put your weightlifting gear in your Black Power 96 drawstring bag. Head to the gym with your cooling headband, and you'll be the talk of the gym. And today's premium thank you gift for $100 donation and up, you get a limited edition. This is extraordinary. A limited edition 11 by 17 poster, which is a reproduction of the historic 1982 spear cover, burning spear cover, I should say, featuring the Reparations Tribunal. And that's really important. That's historic because, as you know, there's a lot of talk about reparations now. A lot of people have just discovered it, where the Burning Spear newspaper, which is the sister organ of Black Power 96.3, is evidence that reparations and the discussion existed much earlier than many of the people who now discovering the issue would have us believe. So please make your contribution. You can do all of the things we just mentioned in terms of contributing to the success of the radio station, expressing your support for Omali Taught Me, and it'll make this discussion that we're going to do now a lot more efficient, and I won't have to stop as much to say, send some money, give some support, etc. Let's let it come all in, and I can just spend time dealing with the study itself. So I want to thank you, and anticipating that we'll not only make the July goal, but hopefully we'll make the July goal of $2,000 on today. So as you know, we've been working with the issue of reparations now for, this is the third week, and we're working with the document, Reparations Now, the book, that was published in 1983, a few months following the successful 1982 groundbreaking historic tribunal on reparations for African people in the United States. This is the first time in history that the United States was put on trial by African people ourselves for its treatment of African people, its bloody, brutal, vicious treatment of African people that has not ended up to now. And it was a tribunal that was significant for a number of reasons. First, as I mentioned, it was the first time the United States government has ever been put on trial. And when we say we put the government on trial, we didn't mean just the president. We didn't mean just the court system. We meant the Congress as well. And of course, it's significant that we mention the Congress because much of the interest in the question of reparations now has been generated due to the fact that on June 19th, a subcommittee of the U.S. Congress dealt with the issue, had a hearing that talked about reparations and had some interesting people who came forward to talk about reparations. Most of them were Africans, but even some of the congresspersons were talking about reparations. And this was an extraordinary thing to behold and to learn that there are more than 60 persons who are now on board supporting from the U.S. Congress who are signatories or supporters of the resolution, House Resolution 41, something that was introduced to the U.S. Congress in 1989 by Representative John Conyers from Detroit. And it was something that, that only called for a study to see if reparations are due to African people. And it couldn't even get out of committee for more than 30 years. And the last time an attempt was made to get it out of committee, Nancy Pelosi, the person who is the Speaker of the House, prevented that from occurring. She's a tough woman. And no, she's not. She's a tough white woman. And she's a colonizer. And so suddenly now Nancy Pelosi is also for reparations. So with Nancy on board, 60 members of the United States Congress signing on to this, and a hearing happened in public view, which was extraordinary for many forces. Reparations is something now that is possible to sign on to, and in fact, it is trending, as they say. And almost every day, you will see on CNN or some other bourgeois, some other colonial platform, an African who you've never heard of before, who is waxing eloquently about reparations and why African people should have reparations. It is something to behold, and people are just discovering the question. But as we show here, reparations is not something that's just been discovered. Again, 7 years before Conyers went to put forth this bill, 7 years before the creation of what is characterized as the premier reparations organization in this country, that is now called INCOBRA, was ever created. The African People's Socialist Party was responsible for holding the International Tribunal on Reparations for African People in the United States. It was an extraordinary event. So it was historic in the sense that it was the first time the United States government was put on trial. It was very significant because of the amount of information and data in a 2-day period that was pulled together. It was incredible because of the participants in this tribunal. And what it did was show how a revolutionary approach to the question of reparations looked. The African People's Socialist Party got involved in the reparations question in a fashion that challenged the traditional method that has been used. While there had been some small meetings of people gathered to talk about reparations and how we need to get reparations, and there had been individuals who, and sometimes committees, who would go and with their briefcases and try to get things done in this court or that court, and who would try to get legislators to handle the question. It was something that was done outside of the view and the hearing of the masses of African people for whom the reparations demand is necessary for changing our conditions, and without whom there is no such possibility of achieving reparations. And I don't care how much, how many likes people can get today on the question, because it's now become fashionable. And I don't care whether CNN or C-SPAN will actually record a hearing at the U.S. Congress. Without the masses of participation of African people, reparations is a joke. It's a dream. There's no way in hell. What might occur, and very well is likely to occur, with growing pressure from below, with growing crisis of this whole social system, a rotten white nationalist social system that is born on slavery, genocide of the indigenous people, is that as the tensions ratchet up, the United States government will find a method through which they can provide some so-called African leaders with what they would call reparations, which will be nothing more than a newfangled poverty program or some kind of welfare program, and that's not what we're talking about at all. So when our party came into this reparations issue, one, it was important for us to show that reparations, when we talk about reparations, we're not just talking about for slavery and unearned wages, so to speak. And slavery was about more than not earning wages. It was a whole disruption of history. It was the disruption of the productive capacity and process of the continent of Africa and all of the millions of African people on the continent, and of course the Africans here. It was a situation of murdering Africans with impunity, scarring African people with impunity, just horrible treatment. That's when slavery was a situation where African human beings were owned like shoes, like chickens, like cows and other things, and which meant that the owner could and did do anything they wanted to do to and with our people. It was the worst kind of brutal humiliation, degradation that is possible. It was the rape of children and wives and daughters and sons by imperialist white men and women. It was just a situation where babies, African babies, were taken from their mothers and given as gifts to white women. It was a situation where even George Washington's wife was given a gift of an African woman. I mean, this was the reality. It was more than just stolen labor. It was stolen futures, stolen lives. And I think that's really important for us to understand, that when we talk about that. So we're talking about more than just stolen labor, more than just the reparations for slavery. That was one thing. And because the studies that we presented at the tribunal showed very clearly that the rate of exploitation of African people grew greater since slavery. That is to say, after slavery was declared to be over, the rate of exploitation of Africans inside the United States grew greater. So that was one thing that the African People's Socialist Party took into that debate. Before that, the only thing that they were talking about in terms of reparations is for slavery, right? So I think that's important to understand. For us, the issue of reparations was a function of the revolution. That our objective was not just to get fat under imperialism, because there was a whole tradition of people who raise cattle and animals and what are fattening them. They're still going to end up behind the counter at McDonald's, but they make them pretty fat before they slaughter them. And so we're not trying to get fat as captives. We want to end the captivity of African people, and that's the approach that we took for reparations, which is why, as opposed to simply going to the Congress, we put the Congress on trial. We put the U.S. government on trial. And the main thing that we understood is that the power is in the people. Mobilize, organize, win the people to this understanding, and then that's the basis for the achievement of reparations. And a real achievement of reparations by African people will leave the United States destitute and make it necessary for white people to get jobs like everybody else. All right, so those of you participating in this study should have got an additional part of this study. Initially, we were just going to begin with the summation of the World Tribunal that was made by the People's Advocate. I played the role of a People's Advocate, and we decided that it would really be important beyond that to present from the co-chair of the National United Movement of Barbados, who was one of the panel of judges in this tribunal, an explanation of the ruling of the judges. And getting to that, I just want to say, remind people that this tribunal on reparations for African people, again, was a trial. It was important to do a trial. It's important for African people to recognize that anybody can put somebody on trial and should put people on trial. The slave needs to put the slave master on trial. That's how the slave master gets put on trial. The slave master will not put himself on trial for slavery. It's the slave that has the responsibility to do that. Some people say, well, it's not legal because you don't have the law. No, the only ones that the law is the slave master. What we have is a recognition of crimes, offenses that's been committed against us, and we're in the process now of making law. From the perspective of the slave. This is what you call the struggle for dual power. Initially, dual power. That is to say, a power that exists side by side and contends with the power of the ruling class, with the objective of overturning the power of the ruling class, overturning the power of the slave, and then of the slave master, and then putting what used to be the slave in power. So on November 13th, 1982 is the date of the beginning date of the two-day tribunal and World Tribunal on Reparations for Black People. And I just want to say that the tribunal had as a responsibility various things. And I'm just going to go back, and this is sort of a repeat, that the People's Advocate, read through the charges and asked a panel of international judges for their verdict. And the charges number one is the United States guilty of genocide against African people in the U.S. as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide? That was the first question. And I just want to mention that today the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is waging a struggle. Africans charge genocide, where that struggle is being continued today, carrying out the verdict that we will have reached, that was reached in 1982. Charge 2, is the United States guilty of violation of the United Nations Charter as it relates to that is to say, the United States government treatment of Africans in the United States. And the verdict was guilty. And charge number 3 is the United States guilty of violation of the spirit and intent of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. And the judges voted guilty unanimously. And charge number 4 is the United States guilty of violation of the spirit and intent of the International Bill of Human Rights, guilty by unanimous vote. So these were the issues that the judges of the World Tribunal on Reparations for African People were asked to rule on. And they did rule on them. And there were judges there from what they now call South Africa, from Congo, from the United States, from Barbados, from Senegal, and various other places. And so I'm going to start now by reading from the judge from Barbados, Palanke Ladipo Solanke, who was the co-chair of the National United Movement of Barbados, and he makes an explanation of the judge's ruling. I just think it's kind of important to hear what Solanke had to say. Fellow distinguished judges, honorable people's advocate, honorable members of the press, honorable audience, a people who have faced the horrors as outlined in the testimony of these 2 days must congratulate themselves to have the moral fortitude to be here for this historical tribunal. The detailed amount of documentation and testimony presented to us would make it impossible to deal in depth with the judgment. So we have decided to look superficially, but very carefully, at the main reasons that the judgment is based on. During the 2 days of the International Tribunal on Reparations for African People in the U.S., irrefutable evidence has been brought before this tribunal to indict the U.S. government without a shadow of a doubt. As a matter of fact, there may have never been a court in the world in session which has had the benefit of such an array of intellectual talent of its witnesses. Justice has come to be seen in the Western capitalist world today as the biased directive of the ruling class against the oppressed class. Millions of Africans in the United States of America have been railroaded into the courts, virtually all of whom have possessed low levels of literacy. The first question that we had to decide on, and this is the judgment in relation to the African people in the United States, are indeed due reparations from the U.S. government. The crime against African people in the U.S. is, without fear of contradiction, the greatest crime in the known history of human civilization. It is the crime of crimes. It makes Hitler's extermination of 6 million Jews appear to be child's play. For over 200 million Africans were removed from Africa. The civilization destroyed, their culture stolen, and over 150 million Africans brutally murdered under the worst possible conditions. In the U.S. up to today, African people remain colonized. African people in the U.S. therefore have a just reparation claim for $4,100 billion. I just have 3 short excerpts in relation to that because the evidence was not presented to the court this morning because of a lack of time. The most abundant evidence, that is to say, we presented to the court the documentation, the piece that the economic analysis and what have you, that for the first time in history quantified the amount of value that has been stolen from African people just in labor alone. This was precedent. Some years later, a person wrote a book called The Debt. His name was Randall Robinson, that used this $4.1 trillion that we're talking about here as the basis for reparations of African people. Randall Robinson's book did quite well, and even as people forgot that the tribunal happened, that is to say, people, I mean now, the media, I mean now much of the so-called white left who paid no attention to it, and most of the so-called sectors of the African liberation movement, they took Robinson's book and heralded it as this major new development because it came separate from any relationship to the masses of the people, and certainly the African working class had nothing to do with it. So, so we didn't have time to actually make the presentation, but all of this was distributed to the court, to the judges, to be considered. So here, the most abundant evidence to wage evidence for wage reparations has been outlined in the booklet Historical Brief for the International Tribunal on Reparations for Black People in the U.S. Here are a few relevant points, and this is the book that this was put out in book form, by the way, and that we'll mention a little later on. In chapter 2, quote, chattel slavery, the primitive accumulation of capital from 1619 to 1865, page 9, paragraph 3. For Britain in the 16th and 17th centuries, the slave trade and the sugar triangular trade was the basis for the concentration of capital leading to the first factories and the beginning of the modern capitalist system. The document, unquote, the document also supported this by pointing out in the text Africa and the Rise of Capitalism by William Williams, Howard University, 38, page 11 of the same document, paragraph 2, quote, wealth stolen from African people held as slaves in the United States was not a pre-capitalist anachronism, but rather the essential factor in the explosive growth of capitalism on a world scale. In the enrichening of European and North American societies, in developing the capacity of their petty rulers to lord it over the people of the world because of their superior instruments of production, machinery, and war equipment, unquote. The question of wages, wage reparations was also clearly pointed out in relation to the calculation of data. On page 15, under the heading Profit according to accruing to planners, page 16, paragraph 1, quote, estimates are made based on three kinds of data. The profitability of investments in slaves from the records of planters, direct division of cotton crop production by the numbers of slaves put to work on it, and records of renters of slaves by owners to other industrial and agricultural hiring agents, unquote. In the final analysis, I have accepted the economic argument of this particular document, which provides evidence that African people are due reparations from the United States government of $4,100 billion. 2, I've made a judgment, too, that imprisoned black revolutionaries must be granted political prisoner and prisoner of war status based on the Geneva Convention and other United Nations determinations. The relevant document here was the Geneva Convention number 972 relative to the treatment of prisoners of war of August 12, 1949, which came into force on October 21st, 1950. I want to examine briefly Article 4A, quote, prisoners of war in the sense of the present convention are persons belonging to one of the following categories who have fallen into the power of the enemy. 1, members of the armed forces of a party of the conflict. 2, members of other militia. 3, members of other volunteer corps, including those of organized resistance movements. Paragraph 2, Article 13, quote, prisoners of war must at all times be humanely treated. Any unlawful act causing death or seriously endangering the health of a prisoner of war is prohibited and will be regarded as a serious breach of the present convention, unquote. Based on this document and supported by the testimony of such comrades as Mafundi, who spoke on the oppression of blacks in prison, the testimony of Afeni Shakur, who spoke on the secret police attack on the black movement, the testimony of Akil Al-Jundi, who spoke on the oppression of blacks in prison. This particular brother appears to have an extremely intimate knowledge of his territory and must be protected and regarded as an internationalist revolutionary. In relation to these testimonies, we have no doubt whatever in our minds that black revolutionaries must be granted political prisoner and prisoner of war status. 3, the judgment has also been held that the United States treatment of Africans in the U.S. represents a serious enough breach of the United Nations Human Rights Charter to justify eviction of the United States from the United Nations. I want to say that this tribunal did not happen in a political vacuum. This was in 1982. This was shortly after the election of Ronald Wilson Reagan as President of the United States. Reagan was the Trump of his era. Reagan was also an entertainer, an actor who had become president. He was someone who was going to make America great again. He was somebody who had been opposed, let's say he and the capital that he represented had been opposed to the loss of the Panama Canal, that in 1977, I think it was, Panama, the treaty was signed that would turn Panama back over to the people of Panama. And Reagan accused the president at the time, James Earl Carter, as losing Panama. This was a time when the Nicaraguan Revolution would succeed in 1979, when the Sandinistas marched into Managua and took power there. The El Salvadorian Revolution was heating up, and there was an attempt to push that back. 79, of course, was the year when the Iranian Revolution occurred, and the people of Iran took their country back from the United States government that had overthrown and elected President Mohammad Mossadegh and put in power the Shah of Iran. It's really interesting because these struggles continue right up to this day. The same forces, the same contending elements from Iran to Nicaragua, El Salvador, these are issues that are still being struggled around even as we have this discussion. The crisis of imperialism, of course, Reagan came in and his objective was to crush it. Reagan was somebody who was one of the leaders of the fight against the Black Panther Party when he was governor of California. So there was a crisis of imperialism, and Reagan was the Trump of that era. And part of what we were doing with the tribunal also was developing a strategy, or working a strategy to isolate the U.S. imperialism in the world. Because all the peoples of the world were experiencing the haughty aggression of U.S. imperialism trying to fight its way back into relevancy to become the world hegemon as it had previously been. And so this tribunal was not just an exercise that we were talking about going to court, but it was something that recognized the crisis of imperialism and how the African liberation movement could intervene in this process to deepen the crisis on the one hand of imperialism, and then to assert or insert the struggle of African people as a part of the process of deepening the crisis of imperialism and affecting our own liberation. So we say that Again, 3, the judgment has also been held that the United States treatment of Africans in the U.S. represents a serious enough breach of the United Nations Human Rights Charter to justify eviction of the United States from the United Nations. For the relevant documents, one does not have to go further than the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which in essence forms the basis of the Human Rights Charter, and specifically Article 1, quote, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, unquote. Evidence shows that in the United States of America this is not true, and that all individuals do not have equal rights. Article 3, quote, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, unquote. Evidence also shows that this is not the case, particularly for the African population. Article 4, quote, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, unquote. And there is no more conclusive evidence than the statistical facts relating to the number of Africans and non-Africans locked down in the prisons of the United States of America. Article 5, quote, no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, unquote. Article 7, quote, all equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law, unquote. In addition, we can point now to Articles 6, 9, 11, 12, 15, 18, 19, 21, 23, Section 1, 26, Section 2, and 27, Section 2, with all due respect to the provisions of Article 30. In this respect, we must make a specific comment that the United States government must be exposed for its fraudulent hypocrisy on the face of the planet Earth. It screams from the mountaintops in the face of human rights. But more atrocities are committed against Africans and non-African people in the United States of America than anywhere on the face of this earth. Therefore, we must act as quickly as possible to seek to evict the United States government from the United Nations. Finally, Section 4. The judgment is that the testimony and documentation presented at the tribunal indeed justifies the establishment of an international body to monitor the treatment by the U.S. government of African people in the United States. Abundant evidence has come to our attention in the 2 days of the hearings of the International Tribunal on Reparations for Black people in the United States, that the treatment of African people must be monitored. As a matter of fact, if it is not monitored, African people in the United States face imminent genocide. I will go further. Countries which maintain a presence in the United Nations and which are sympathetic with the just demands for reparations must be used to carry forward this monitoring regularly to the United Nations, as well as all the other support committees in the United States who have expressed solidarity with the International Tribunal we have convened. To have served in the capacity of a judge in this great historic tribunal has probably provided me in 2 days with more evidence and testimony than some judges have heard in 10 years, particularly in relation to the qualitative and expert substance in itself. Those who have attended this tribunal have received an education for which, if they had to pay, would amount to several thousands of dollars. It is an education which would take several ordinary lifetimes to acquire. Indeed, we are fortunate to have been part of this historic conference, and we should and must share this knowledge. In relation to Barbados, I shall be brief. I have been talking for several days in different parts of the United States on the conditions in Barbados. I do not wish to say anything more than that the conditions in Barbados and the Caribbean are exactly the same as those which exist in the United States of America at present, except to a lesser proportion. Consequently, there must be solidarity with progressive white United States forces, African forces, and all other conscious forces in the world who face similar types of problems. My job as judge does not end here. We who are blessed with the little extra intellectual potential will have to judge on behalf of the 50 million developing African peoples wherever we are in the world. We shall always remember, and I particularly, that history has been created in these 2 days, and I wish to ask you a very important question, and I am sure that you are very delighted to be a part of this history, aren't you, Uhuru? So that was Solanke that was Pianki Ladipu Solanke from Barbados, and this was a summation of, as a judge, of the basis for the conclusions that they had come to. And then the last thing I want to go through here is the summation of the World Tribunal coming from the People's Advocate, which was the role that I assumed for the tribunal. And this is the summation. Sisters and brothers, Africans, and peoples of the world, we have heard the testimony of some of the finest representatives of our people. We've heard testimony which confirms like nothing other than our very existence confirms greatness, the greatness of this people who brought civilization to the earth, and who it is very clear have the responsibility to bring civilization back to the face of this earth. That is an objective responsibility independent of the will of those of us in this room. We've heard testimony, and there has been introduced documentation that shows that it is the oppression of African people here and throughout the world, which is the very foundation and cornerstone of the existence of this terrible world economic system that causes destruction throughout the earth. Such being the case, it is very clear that if you remove the cornerstone, buildings will come tumbling down. This is in no way an attempt to refute the struggles of the various peoples around the world and the needs to be in solidarity with them. It's just like any structure and building. If you want to take it down, there are several routes. You can take it down brick by brick, or you can target the cornerstone and snatch it out, and the entire building comes down. African people, the oppression of African people, the continuing oppression of African people, which every reactionary oppressive force on the face of the earth is in unity to maintain. African people, our oppression, which has never ended, which has been continuous, and which has operated on various fronts at the same time, represents the cornerstone and at the same time the weakest link of this imperialist country, this imperialist world. Therefore, the judgment which comes from a tribunal such as this is very, very important. Someone may think that to be able to make such a statement as this statement, to be able to make a statement as those statements made by these jurors, represents partiality or biasness. Such a person thinking such a thing would be absolutely correct. But to say it represents biasness is not to say that it represents unjustness or injustice. It is recognized that all institutions are given birth by the societies from which they are developing. If you live in a situation in any country, whether there is a court there, a police force, an army, a bank, or what have you that exists in that situation, it will have the nature of the society that it comes from. If you live in a country or world that is built on slavery, barbarity, thievery, genocide, and institutions, the institutions of that society, in any place in the world will be there for the purpose of sustaining the enslavement and the genocide. There is the bourgeois court in this society. That is the court of the slave master, of the ruling class. There have been continuous attempts to prove objectivity when they take us there before lynching us legally, if they don't lynch us on the streets, like so many people testified about in the last 2 days. But what they do when they talk about objectivity is attempt to obscure the nature of the institutions themselves. And the fact that these institutions cannot but be about maintaining that which gave it birth, that which enriches it, that which keeps the powerful powerful and the powerless powerless. For today, in the last 2 days, we have set about creating another institution. And this institution, at this juncture in history, does not have a permanent place to rest except in us. And this institution is a world tribunal, which brought the United States government for the first time in its history to trial for the crimes it has committed against black people in this country. And this tribunal is a biased tribunal. It is a tribunal that moves on the assumption that black people must be free, and that anything that stands in the way of that liberation must be removed. We are biased. This world tribunal stands in opposition to virtually every court that exists in this country. They are opposing and contending forces. This world tribunal stands in opposition to the United States Supreme Court. They are opposing and contending forces. One represents the powerful and oppressive. One represents the oppressed and those who are determined to be free. It is biased. It is a biased tribunal. It does not attempt to represent the interests of those who are oppressors. It does not pretend to represent the interests of those who are oppressors. There is no such objectivity on the face of the earth. Some pretend that there is such objectivity. We do not pretend. And it is only for that reason, with all of its biasness, this court is a much more just court than those courts which exist in this country. I must say that one very important difference we are confronted with here is that we must not take the holding of state power lightly. You know, court is an instrument of state power. It is the possession of the state power by our oppressors that make them able to carry out their oppressive will. When we talk about state power, we talk about control of the courts, the police, the army, the navy. We are talking about an apparatus that has the ability to coerce, to force people to do what they want done. We must not take lightly the notion of state power. We don't have state power at this time, but we have the capacity for revolutionary people's power. And the question that is before us today, the question that is more important or that will give significance to anything that any witness stated here, more significance than any solidarity shown and not shown by those who did not have the courage to come and act as judges. The most significant thing that's going to give meaning to any of this, to the risk of life and liberty of those international jurors who sit here, because they face tyrants where they come from, tyrants that are upheld by this government. The thing that will give it meaning is what we do upon leaving this building. If this court and its verdict is going to be recognized as having meaning in the world, it will be because of those of us who are in here. Take it out in the world, understanding its meaning and understanding its legality and forcing everybody else to recognize that legality. Let me tell you something. We started off this tribunal giving a history of the solidarity that African people have given to every revolutionary force in this world. We started off building for this tribunal with promises of solidarity from virtually every revolutionary force in this world. Look at what is here with us in terms of the judges and the world observers. They know the power of U.S. imperialism. We must teach them the power of international solidarity. We shall teach them the power of international solidarity by the forcefulness of the focus that our revolutionary movement in this country finally has. reparations is a demand whose time has come. Therefore, we can sum it up very easily for anybody, whatever nationality, anybody who presupposes they are friends of black people in this country. Do you support the judgment which came from the World Tribunal on Reparations for Black People? 1. And what is your position on the demand by 40 million African people in the U.S. for reparations now? The thing that will give meaning to everything that has happened in this room for the last 2 days is our willingness and our capacity to make everybody have to answer that question. Everybody. I can't talk about the importance of this too much for too long. Our international allies have accepted the definitions of the white ruling class of the world for who we are and our significance all over the world. I'm telling you what I know. I can tell you revolutionary countries where I've visited. I've watched Tarzan on television. So now we tell the world our allies, objectively speaking, are our objective allies. Our objective allies. Some people are our allies objectively and are just too dumb to know it subjectively. What we have to do is educate them. We call it positive criticism. What's your stand on reparations for black people? We say the movement has a focus. We don't ask you your position on housing. We don't ask you your position on busing. Frankly, we don't give a damn. What's your position on reparation? What's your position on the $4.1 trillion? That's just in wages. We'll get to the damages later. What's your position, señora, compañero, however you say it? That's the question that has to be raised. On tomorrow, the 15th and 16th, we'll be pulling together the beginning of the African National Reparations Organization. That's going to be a part of taking this demand out into the world. We have a long process to be involved in terms of bringing all this testimony and organizing it and putting it out in the world. I'm not exactly sure what methods are going to be used yet. Our party has a minor capacity for publishing. I'm not quite sure what that means in terms of how we do it. I'm hoping that this reparations organization that we create will have the ability to take on that task. There's a publishing company in England which had written when they knew this tribunal was going to happen, suggesting that it would be willing to publish these proceedings. Then the reparations organization must be created to take it out in the world. Then these international sisters and brothers from various places where African people have been dispersed have to take it back and unite our brothers and sisters around the world with this demand. Because as quiet as it's kept, for legal purposes, we are targeting the U.S. right now. But the U.S. government and all of Europe understands the implication of a single African anywhere on the face of the earth demanding reparations. James Brown made a song about it called The Big Payback. United Nations, the brother said a little about its structure and its inherent injustice. It is an unjust, undemocratic organization. And the U.S. has proved itself to be the most undemocratic of them all. Here's a country preaching democracy all over the world, and you hear this ugly human being, Kirkpatrick is her name. You see this nauseating criminal, false species of a human being acting like a fool, talking about because people voted against the U.S., voted against Israel, if you don't do what we say, we're going to take all the cash from the important programs and that take medical aid to people around the world, that take, in theory, food growing techniques to people around the world. If you vote against us, this bastion of democracy says we'll take the money away, we'll starve you to death, we'll make this organization collapse. This is in 1982. So people are talking about Trump as some kind of outlier, some kind of weirdo, some kind of extraordinary. This is Kirkpatrick in 1982. That was 37 years ago. some 35 years before the election of Donald Trump. This is imperialism that we're talking about. This is the colonizer nation. This is an entity that assumes it has the authority of life and death over all the peoples around the world. That's why this tribunal had to happen. That's why we demand reparations. And if you can look at what Kirkpatrick was doing 37 years ago, and Trump is doing it today, you'd be a fool to believe that the U.S. Congress that couldn't stop Kirkpatrick, that can't stop Trump, is going to give reparations to African people on its own accord. Doesn't make any sense. So we'll start a rearguard action with all of the oppressed peoples around the world who don't have possession of state power. If you are as eager to leave as you say you are, then, talking to the U.S. about the United Nations, we'll demand that you go because of the treatment of black people in the U.S., and we'll demand of our allies and people who say they support our struggle that they demand that the U.S. go. There was a great man once whose name was Chairman Mao. He said, U.S. imperialism ain't nothing but a paper tiger. And here we have the peoples of the world quivering because of a punk organization like the U.S. saying we'll pull out. And you know it's a punk organization because every time we fought back against it, we won. Only time we lose is when we don't fight. Every question that's around black political prisoners and prisoners of war would be recognized as a just and righteous demand by the United Nations. The World Court, any court, depending on what we do. Assata Shakur is welcome here depending on what we do. There should be no place and no black community where in this country, anywhere in this country, that a Sundiata Akoli can't come. And there should be no one that is not willing to do the kind of work that makes it possible for Sundiata Akoli to come there. What we do, we should never allow anybody else to take from us those revolutionary men and women whose difference from us is that they dared at the critical junctures of history to put their bodies on the line in the struggle for freedom and justice for black people. If we, those of us in this room, take this stand outside this room, we legalize it ourselves. States give themselves legality. States give themselves legality. States legalize themselves. What do you think impose legality on the U.S. government? Do you believe that garbage about the Israelites talk about that they went out on top of the mountain and the great hand wrote something on a piece of stone and sent it down by Moses? No, states give themselves power. So the people must have power, and the people must indicate that we confer upon the people ourselves the revolutionary power to carry out the will of this world tribunal. If you don't do it, there won't be no freedom, and this tribunal will be meaningless. That's important. Again, we're talking about things like House Resolution 40 and whether the Congress should say a study should happen. The people have to have possession of this demand and make the determination under the leadership of the advanced detachment of the African Revolution, the advanced detachment of the working class. I'm hoping that one of the things that can come out of the African National Reparations Organization is the creation of a permanent tribunal. Some people may have the most mercenary interest in reparations. Whatever the interest, if you intend to collect, you're going to have to keep tabs on the damage done. So we need a permanent tribunal established. And we need to confer, African people need to confer on the African National Reparations Organization that is to be built, the right, the duty, the obligation to establish a permanent international tribunal to monitor the treatment of African people in this country. And that's why for 11 consecutive years following this initial tribunal, the other tribunals were held throughout the United States. And this is part of what took the issue before the masses of people. And it was not just, and people came and testified of their circumstances, their situations. Akron, Ohio, and Baltimore, Maryland, and Philadelphia, and various other places around this country, tribunals were held. We have to do that, in my opinion. That's not to liquidate a lot of the other things which are going to happen. I'm sure, for example, there is going to be sometime shortly after this tribunal, a convening of some international jurors of some repute who will take the documentation, the testimony, the indictment that we have made, who will review it, who will initiate legal opinions, legal writings, which is part of the legal effort to introduce the outcome here to the body of international jurisprudence, which is very important. On the legal front, we will do that. We will hopefully initiate some movement through the Black American Law Students Association, understanding the protracted nature of our struggle, understanding the protracted nature of our struggle, catching them there, tying them up with the implications of this World Tribunal and the demand for reparations, and hopefully building something among the black law students in this country so that they can have an opportunity to use law which comes from the state in the interest of the aspirations of black people in this country by contributing to this precedent in international law that we are talking about. There are other things that I am sure will come out of this African National Reparations Organization. But in the last analysis, it will be we who will free us. It will be black people willing to take on the task at hand, which will be responsible for our liberation. For most of us, I'm sure that's not shocking at all. Most of us understand exactly what our struggle is about. We have had 2 days of testimony which I suspect has probably resulted in the most concentrated amount of documentation and information on the struggle and history of black people in this country that has been amassed in a very long time, if ever before. If nothing else, it seems to this people's advocate that one thing that we should have perceived from all of the testimony that's been presented is the absolute necessity for black people to make our struggle on our own terms. When I say make our struggle on our own terms, I mean the most important way that part of these terms must be ideological. That is, we must control the ideas that motivate those who would make revolutionary struggle in the interest of black people. Those who define rule. Those who define rule. You may call them what you will. Anybody who's defining for black people in this country in the last analysis, are those who are making the determination for black people in this country. Anybody, any place on the face of the earth who has someone else making determinations for them are a people who are living in bondage. We must make that determination. We had that determination in our hands up until the late 1960s and early 1970s. Our movement was attacked viciously, and we heard some of the testimony about that. It was attacked viciously. It was a method that the CIA had first attempted in Vietnam, but failed. It was a method which in South Vietnam they call the Phoenix Program. The idea of the Phoenix Program was to decapitate the leadership of the revolutionary movement in South Vietnam. The CIA murdered, assassinated, and this is documented, 39,000 cadre of the National Liberation Front in South Vietnam in an attempt to decapitate that movement, to crush the people's struggle to be free. In the United States of America, the United States government used that same Phoenix Program. It decapitated the black liberation movement. Everywhere you looked up, black people who stood on the side of freedom and justice and socialist democracy, for black people find themselves either in prison all over this country, dead or underground. But the U.S. had learned something from Vietnam, that it is not enough merely to decapitate a movement by killing its leaders. Fred Hampton said it well, quote, "You can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution," unquote. And so what happened to our communities in the late 60s and early 70s is that someone else began to define for us ideologically other than ourselves. At the last, most important part of this movement we've been involved in for the last 10 years has been a fight to take control of our own movement once again from those who call themselves our allies. Now, if nothing else, I think this tribunal shows us the very need, the absolute need to control our own movement. Final remarks. There are North Americans in this country who say they are friends of the struggle of black people. There's a representative, one of the best of the North American working class here, who has put forth his understanding of the tremendous task that is ahead in order to win the North American working class. It too must accept the black liberation movement on our own terms. It cannot set terms for us. This left, listen to me, sisters and brothers, because this is very important. We've got to walk out of here with this. This left says it's for redistribution of the wealth. Don't you hear it said all the time? We are for redistribution of the wealth, unquote. We must say this to the left. So are we. We want $4.1 trillion, and the struggle that you're involved in, where you say you're talking about black folk, you've got to raise the demand for reparations. If they don't raise the demand for reparations, we are supposed to call them funny names. This left that saw 1 million people spend $1 million on a march, a picnic against the so-called nuclear war, when black people in this country have a lifespan which is on the average 7 years shorter than white people in this country. And they are worried about a nuclear war. When the people of El Salvador are dying like flies from the imperialist power of this country, they're talking about a nuclear war. Those folk who are interested in that campaign, they tell us this thing. They put forth slogans like money for social programs, not for bombs and war. They say that the money going for nuclear armaments and armaments generally is money that should be going into programs for the people. We say we agree. We want $4.1 trillion reparations. And the next time 1 million of you walk down the streets in New York, raise the demand of reparations for black people. Not a single dollar for a single bullet. $4.1 trillion for black people in the United States for 400 years of oppression. Black folks don't like to deal with white folks and the white left. Ain't nothing wrong with dealing with nobody if you do it on your own terms. Establish your terms. This World Tribunal has established the terms. The African National Reparations Organization will establish the terms. And yes, we'll talk to the anti-nuke movement about $4.1 trillion. The next time there's a march down the streets in New York, if they don't have no banners calling for reparations for black people, they might have to fight us to get to where they're going. I say that in all honesty and all seriousness, sisters and brothers. They are talking about the possibility of nuclear accidents, nuclear war. Do you know that there are peoples around the world who would dance in the streets if a nuclear accident took this monster off the map? Do you know there are peoples around the world who would shout to the heavens if a nuclear accident took this monster off the map? The North American population, the working class included, must be able to recognize that it's going to have to unite with the masses of the peoples of the world, but it has consciously or otherwise united with its own ruling class. And everybody around the world, every victory around the world against U.S. imperialism, because of their false unity and false identification, puts their backs up against the wall. And if the North American working class keeps its back up against the wall in the face of the struggles of the peoples of the world, if it keeps its back up against the wall, how in the hell is it going to read the writing that's on the wall? It won't be able to read the writing that's on the wall. So what has to happen is we have to make struggle on every level. If there's a Negro politician running for office anywhere, ask about the question of this World Tribunal. Make him say, yeah, I think it's legal, it's right. You've got to do it. But do it in public. Don't whisper it with your little letters to him. Ask him the next time next meeting where he's having questions. Congressman, what's your position on the World Tribunal? Make these Negro people who live off the blood of black people who struggles, the masses struggles, made it possible for them to be Dr. So-and-so. These parasites who don't work for a living but make their living of teaching us how to pray. Make them say that they unite with the outcome of this tribunal and with the demand for reparations. When your liberal politicians come through your community and you've got to put the sucker well, what is your position on the World Tribunal on reparations for black people? It came to certain particular consciousness, it came to certain particular conclusions about the United States and the oppression of black people. Do you agree with them? What is your position on the demand for reparations for black people in this country? And then there are other things that will happen too. But most importantly, this thing about the World Tribunal must be taken out into the world and must be made legal in the sense that the masses of black people and other peoples in the world understand it. If you do that, sisters and brothers, there ain't nothing that we can do wrong making this revolution. I'm going to just clarify that and end. There are some black people who are really who are being chased. Some are dead. Some are underground, ostensibly because they were involved in a robbery of a Brinks truck. This government has been able to paint those men and women as criminals. They call them robbers. There are people on the west coast of California who've been organizing in the prisons and in the black communities. This government is able to paint them as criminals. If we take this out into the world, if we take this World Tribunal and its conclusions out into the world, we clarify who the criminals are. And in addition to everything, in addition to clarifying who the criminals are, if a Brinks truck should be expropriated, everybody understands that a revolution needs funds. Nobody is going to have no problem with that. What's $1.6 million compared to $4.1 trillion? If we take this out into the world, they can't take a person like they did in the 60s and bring them before the courts and say, well, these people killed policemen in their communities while they were talking about freedom, and get away with it. Because if you take this out and make it legal in the eyes of the people of the world, and you understand that it's our just struggle, then everybody else will understand that the oppressor sometimes, and as often as possible, will have to die for the oppressed to be free. Nobody holds it against the Vietnamese people for killing the Americans when they come there raiding their country. No rational person on the face of the earth, because the peoples of the world recognizes that the Vietnamese struggle is a just struggle. I shall tell you this, that it was the oppression and enslavement of African people in this world that gave birth to U.S. capitalism and world imperialism. That the first crime that was committed by imperialism was committed against black people. That we are the oldest victims of imperialism in the world. And that there cannot possibly be any struggle more just than the revolutionary struggle of African people here or anywhere on the face of the earth. I would like to thank this great, great, great African people for coming out, for making this possible. I would like to thank Sister Queen Mother Moore for being a living example in 1982 that we will fight from generation to generation. I would like to give special appreciation to our panel of international jurors and ask black people again to remember what came of this testimony out of this World Tribunal today. Because there was one other thing that came out of it, that we got the same problems, same struggles everywhere black people are located. And that being the case, sisters and brothers, you and African people throughout the world must demand that we unite this struggle around the world. You must demand it. You must not allow any African anywhere on the face of the earth to stand up and say they stand for black people and they ain't united in some practical organizational way. Then they are not united in some practical organizational way. You must demand it. We don't want no more discussion about Pan-Africanism. We want a demonstration of practical organizational unity that's coordinating the revolutionary struggle of black people around the world. If we ain't willing to do that, then we shouldn't be standing up talking about no unity among black people. That's what Marcus Garvey said. Does anybody want to call him a liar? He said, Africa for Africans, those at home and those abroad. That was the only internationalism in the period of 1917, when the European Communist International collapsed in the face of their national chauvinism. It was Garvey and the black movement around the world that held up the internationalism for the world to see. And it was that movement that was moved on by imperialism all around the world. I'd like to thank our political observers for coming here and being with us. And with that, sisters and brothers, Africans and peoples of the world, This World Tribunal on Reparations for Black People in the United States is officially adjourned. Thank you. They say cut back. We say payback. Reparations now. Uhuru. All right. Uhuru. So before going to questions and answers in the next part of this discussion, we have a few minutes, and I want to really have an opportunity to talk to you. But I want to remind you also that our ability to have this discussion is based on the willingness of Black Power 96.3 to provide us the platform of the radio station, Black Power 96.3 FM, located in St. Petersburg, Florida. And although you may be participating in this discussion using various other platforms, YouTube, Facebook, or what have you, the fact is that it is 96.3 that makes it possible for us to have this discussion. And this station is a station of the people, of African people. And it's really important because you know there's various other radio stations that call themselves community stations, and most of them, almost all of them, most of them are run by North Americans of the colonizer nation, and they might be friendly and what have you, but it's not the same as us having our own. And I've been on and participated in some of the community, so-called community radio stations and got kicked off because people didn't like what we were saying about African people and the struggle. We could never have had this discussion on any of those other stations that I'm talking about. So I'm calling on you. This station is having a fundraising goal for July of $7,000 for the month of July. And our responsibility for Omali taught me is to raise $2,000. And we believe that we can do this in one setting, one session. And we're calling on you. If you appreciate this, if you want to see the continuation of Black Power 96.3 FM and what we provide or what it provides for people everywhere in the state of Florida, in St. Petersburg, Florida, and around the world, then we want you to make a contribution. We don't care where you are. We don't care the size of the contribution, but we want you to contribute to this, to take possession, to own it. Most African people don't have an opportunity to participate in community-owned radio stations. And so this whole idea of making a contribution to keep a radio station on the air, to keep programming on the air, is kind of foreign to many of us. But we don't understand that when we listen to our favorite radio station that plays all the garbage that we subjected to, that we are funding that program because those programs, those stations are funded by advertisement for different kinds of corporate products and things like that. And every time you buy one of those products, you're funding that radio station. Every time you open up that computer that supports that radio station, you're funding that radio station. What we're saying is come directly now to your station. This is ours, and it gives us the ability to have this discussion. So again, the goal, our July goal is $2,000. I think we should be able to raise that today. And then you can donate and pledge by going to blackpower96.org/donate. You can call, that is to say, blackpower96.org/donate. You can call 1-888-979-BP96. That's 1-888-979-2796. And then let us know your pledge on the chat, on YouTube or Facebook. Then when you donate, you get a membership card, because that's what we're talking about. It's a member drive for Black Power 96.3 FM. And we'll include some Black Power 96 swag, depending on your membership level, and everybody gets a bumper sticker. A $20 donation will get a new Black Power 96 cooling headband, and everybody wants that because everybody who we're talking to now, working with now, is trying to be healthy, working out and doing all those other kind of stuff, and you're going to sweat a lot, so you need a cooling sweatband from Black Power 96 headband. And then you become a sustaining monthly member at $5 per month or higher, and we will thank you with the Black Power 96 drawstring bag. Carry your burning spear newspapers and other politically relevant and revolutionary materials and your workout gear when you go to the gym wearing your cool sweat headband, Black Power 96. And then today's premium thank you gift of $100 and up will get you the limited edition 11x17 poster reproduction of the historic 1982 Burning Spear cover featuring the Reparations Tribunal. So this Reparations Tribunal happened in November 13th and 14th, 1982, and the Burning Spear newspaper covered that, and with a $100 and up donation, you will get the poster of the reproduction of this 1952 Burning Spear cover featuring the Reparations Tribunal. So Uhuru Comrades. Yeah.
Let's give and salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for that powerful study. So as mentioned, now we want to open it up for questions from our audience, our online viewers. We want to appreciate everyone who's tuning in via Facebook and YouTube, and also appreciate all of your engagement. Please continue to invite your friends and family to the study and share widely on all your social media platforms. And as Chairman mentioned, this study is broadcasted on Black Power 96.3 FM. You know, this Black Power community-owned radio station, not owned and controlled by any capitalist corporation. It is owned and controlled by you, the Black working class. And this is the only radio station where you'll even hear this type of profound study happening. And we want you to support Omali Taught Me's fundraising goal of $2,000, and people have already contributed, and I'm going to announce some of those people. And as mentioned, the goal for July for Black Power 96 is $7,000, and we already raised $1,833 by the start of this month. So right now we're at $1,833 thanks to you. So we're 26% of our way there for the month of July. And again, $2,000 today for Omali Taught Me, and I know we can do it. So as mentioned, there are a few ways that you can donate and pledge. You can go to blackpower96.org/donate and put Omali Taught Me in the comments and make your contribution right there. You can call 1-888-979-BP96. That's 1-888-979-2796. And let us know your pledge in the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can also mail in cash, check, money order to Black Power 96 to 1245 18th Avenue South, St. Petersburg, Florida, 33705. As mentioned, you get a membership card and BP96 swag. So I have right here your bumper sticker. Anybody in the country can, have this on their car to let people know what radio station you tune into, because you can access Black Power 96 via app at the Apple and Google Play Store. Just type in Black Power and it's the first thing that comes up. So you can flaunt your BP96 bumper sticker. And as mentioned, I know there's a lot of people out there doing community outreach, hitting the pavement, sweating. It's hot out here. Global warming is real. So you're going to need your Black Power 96 headband, sweatband. That's what that looks like. So you can go out and swag it out in the streets. And of course, your BP96 drawstring backpack right there. If you can see it, hope you can see it. Your drawstring backpack. So that happens if you donate at $5 per month or higher, you'll get this backpack. $20 donation, you'll get this cooling headband. And as mentioned, you guys saw it on the screen. If you're watching, you will see the 1982 Reparations Tribunal Burning Spear poster that will be 11x17 that you can put on your wall. So anybody comes to your house, you can say the reparations question started here. That, the Reparations Tribunal hosted by the African People's Socialist Party, thing that we've been studying for the last 3 weeks, is, it was the start of putting reparations out into the world, on the ground, into the hands of the masses. So I would like to acknowledge our current sustaining members, and these are the people that, donate a monthly contribution to the station. Every month it comes out, and they are, helping sustaining the radio station. And we have sustainers at $5 a month or more. That's Candace in St. Pete, Santosh, Jesse, Sam in Ohio, Ali Aiello in Boston, and Wendy Craig in San Diego. And then our Bob Marley sustainers, $10 a month. We have Michael in Palmetto, Florida, Ann Hirsch in St. Pete, Tracy in St. Pete, Mads Ambrose in Portland, Oregon, Raya Fogarty in St. Louis, and Mara Ratu in Boston. And our Marcus Garvey sustainers at $25 a month and higher, myself. Kenyon in Orlando, Kabula in Chicago, Nanayal Grant in Philadelphia, Janice Kant in St. Pete, John in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, Robert in New York, Kitty in St. Louis, Marissa in Seattle, and Sandy in Seattle. And the more sustainers Black Pride 96 has, the more the station can do. So become a sustainer today at whatever level is right for you. You can become a $5 a month sustainer, Nina Simone, Bob Marley at $10 a month, or $25 and up at a Marcus Garvey level sustainer. So I want to shout out the people who've already donated, Chairman, to this study to support Omali Taught Me's $2,000 goal. We have Ann Hirsch with $25. Uhuru Ann. Okay, we have Raquel in St. Petersburg, Florida with $30. Uhuru Raquel. Janice Kant donated $50. Uhuru in St. Pete. Uhuru Janice. Comrade Raya Fogarty in St. Louis, Missouri donated $25. Uhuru Raya. We have David Lance in St. Pete with $10. Uhuru David. Penny Hess, chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, donated in St. Louis, donated $25. Uhuru Penny. We have Comrade Johan with $10 in Clearwater, Florida. We have Grady Brown, new sustainer in St. Louis, Missouri at $5 a month. So Uhuru Grady. We have Allison Haney in Philadelphia with $50. Uhuru Alley. We have an anonymous from Denver, Colorado who donated $50. Uhuru, anonymous. We have Maureen Wagner in Oakland, California with $150. Uhuru Maureen. We have Olafin Ikemba in St. Petersburg, Florida with $50. Uhuru Olafin. All right. And we have Bakri Olatunji in Oakland, California with $10. Uhuru Bakri. And Renee in St. Petersburg, Florida, $5. So Uhuru, Renee. And we have more coming in. All right, so that's what we've got coming in so far. And our total right now, we're at $495, Chairman. Uhuru. So we do have, of course, questions. I mean, this study has been so profound already. We want to shout out people who are watching from Nairobi, Kenya, St. Louis, Missouri, Fort Myers, Florida, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, St. Kitts, Springfield, Illinois, Huntsville, Alabama, Miami, Florida, Boston, Massachusetts, Italy, San Diego, California, Gainesville, Florida, Thamesmead, UK, don't know how to pronounce that, London, UK, Chicago, Illinois, Portland, Oregon, and Mesa, Arizona. Salute from Ann Hirsch in St. Petersburg, Florida says, salute Chairman and the APSP for your long-standing strategy to free the African nation. So honored to be a part of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the APSP. Allison Haney comments on YouTube, Uhuru, salute to Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the profound and brilliant history and body of work of the party. Reparations Now. Michael Nurse is viewing from London on YouTube and commented, how can imperialism do justice and remain positioned to predate and exploit the colonized? Reparations, I need to understand this question. Reparations are inimical to imperialism. It cannot be but a sham and distraction from the agenda. Self-determination as a philosophical approach is currently being pursued in Africa in terms of unification and joint economic development. Does that, no? Okay, I'm sorry, Michael. You're going to have to clarify that question a little bit because I'm.
It's probably too brilliant for.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not catching it.
I just want to say that reparations is a function of revolution, and this notion that somehow imperialism is going to give African people anything is ludicrous at best. That imperialism has never given us anything. That everything that has been won through our relationship with imperialism has been taken. And most significantly, it has been taken by genuine armed struggle, ultimately. So the notion that somehow, in this discussion about self-determination on the continent of Africa, I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea. But I know we're building a revolutionary organization on the continent of Africa right now. and that there's going to be no self-determination without a unified Africa, and the only way Africa is going to be unified is through revolutionary organization of the African working class and poor peasantry that would take power. Because the African petty bourgeoisie talks about unification all the time. They destroyed and fought against Nkrumah when Nkrumah tried to bring that unification. They collaborated with imperialism and helped to kill Lumumba, the African petty bourgeoisie. So the class struggle in Africa is going to be absolutely necessary to bring about unification, and that class struggle is going to have to be organized under the leadership of the African working class, aligned with the poor peasantry. So I don't know, it seems to me that ought to say something about what this brother is talking about.
He clarified, and I think you were answering it. Can the imperialists give into the demand for reparations and preserve their power to dominate the oppressed?
Of course not. They can, the only thing they would do is give a sham. But the point is, here's a real point that must be understood about this demand. If you have revolutionary organization, and I hope this brother is a part of the ASI, otherwise he's just flapping gums, because you can't have revolution, you can't defeat imperialism without organization. It takes organization. It takes revolutionary organization. And that's what it's going to take in order to achieve what we call revolution. And no imperialism cannot survive it. But as it sees its capacity to ignore the question, grow because of the crisis of imperialism, the growing organization and consciousness of the masses of our people, it will try to effect a capacity, ability to pay off a sector of the African nation, a sector of the African petty bourgeoisie, and call it reparations or something to that effect. And that's what you have to see. If the U.S. Congress is willing to have a hearing in the United States, it does not intend to pay reparations. It intends to set up a process at best. And the greatest likelihood, of course, is what they're doing, is providing this process that wins a number of African petty bourgeois forces that's never going to struggle against imperialism in the real world at all. But they set up a process through which they can dangle this carrot before a sector of the African petty bourgeoisie that's designed to keep the rest of us calm under their leadership, or they will actually put together a poverty program or welfare program and call it reparations, and these African leaders will be hired to run the programs, and that will be satisfactory for them. So imperialism has to be defeated, it has to be destroyed for African people to be free. But once we have forced them to deal with the question, it arms us. It gives us a greater potential to take this issue to the masses of the African working class, because the people will take it. And that is fundamentally what we are inviting this process to occur. I mean, in St. Petersburg, Florida, right now we're engaged in actual doing political campaigns revolving around, for elections, revolving around the reparations demand. That's not asking the government to give reparations. That's asking the people in St. Petersburg, Florida, to vote on the right for us to have reparations, and then specifically, concretely, to return stolen value to African people. It doesn't rely on the government. It relies on the struggle to take over the government by revolutionary forces in St. Petersburg. That's what we are doing, and that's the only process that we can use. And then as we open this door, the wider this door is open, the more African masses come to understand that it is the government that's been living off welfare from us for the last 400 years in the United States, then we, the masses, will know what to do beyond that, and we just provide the leadership and the organization. Uhuru. And I hope this comrade is in the party or something. But go ahead.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. So we do have more donations coming in. Jackson in St. Pete pledged $5. Uhuru Jackson. Uhuru. We have Kyle Weiss in St. Petersburg, Florida with $10. Uhuru Kyle. We have Comrade Lisa Watson out in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who pledged $100. Uhuru. Seems like Lisa wants one of those posters.
Yeah. Let's get the $2 grand today.
Yes. We have Uhuru Chairman, Black Power 96 sister organization, the African People's Education and Defense Fund, known as the baddest nonprofit on the planet, supports Black Power 96 and the Omali Taught Me show that speaks to raise the consciousness of African people through talk shows, news, music, health and wellness, and other topical programming to facilitate the unification of African people as one people worldwide in the process of liberating Africa. APDF wants to contribute $500 to BP96, who is committed to developing self-reliant, community-controlled media capacity in the hands of the African working class. P.S. Can APEDF get 5 of those reparations posters? Thank you, Onazane Yeshitela, President of APEDF, Deputy Chair of the African People's Socialist Party. And to answer that question, of course, Uhuru. Thank you, Deputy Chair and APEDF, for your generous contribution of $500 to Black Power 96. Uhuru, just give another round of applause. So Comrade Johan upped the ante a little bit. He donated $90 more to make it $100 overall to the study. Uhuru Johan. And we have $25 from Comrade Sandy in Seattle saying reparations now. Uhuru Sandy. Uhuru. So we did have a question from, you kind of said this a little bit,
May I, before you get to that question, I just want to say that I really want to appreciate, I think some of these, if not all of these people are in this call. I don't remember everybody, obviously, who was at the tribunal, but some people worked very hard to make this tribunal happen in New York, and I just want to send a shout out to Comrade Aronde Takuma, out of New York, and to Comrade Omawale Kefing, who's now in Houston, Texas, Comrade Gaida Kambon, who's now in Atlanta. These are 2 veterans of the party, and Aronde is a veteran of the Uhuru movement and was there when helping to organize on the ground in New York. Comrade Gaida was living in New York at the time and played a magnificent, important role in building for the tribunal. I wanted to just say that Comrade Raya Fogarty, who is now in St. Louis, but who, as a member of the Solidarity Movement, in fact, we organized her into the Solidarity Movement while working in New York to build the tribunal. Comrade Penny Hess worked in New York, worked really hard to make this happen. I know Comrade Redbeard, who's been a part of the Uhuru movement in various ways now for a very long time, was there. And there are other people there too, and I wouldn't mind if other people who were there and either at the tribunal or participated in making the tribunal happen, why don't you send us, hit us up, and so that we can call you out as well. Okay, Comrade, thank you, Uhuru.
And wanted to just remind people of ways to donate to Black Power 96.3 FM. You can go to blackpower96.org/donate. You can call 1-888-979-BP96. That's 1-888-979-2796. Let us know your pledge in the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can mail in cash, check, money order to Black Power 96 at 1245 18th Avenue South, St. Petersburg, Florida 33705. So if you got cash or check, and that's how you want to donate to the station, you can do that as well. Wanted to shout out Michael Nurse, who asked the previous question, donated €5, I think that is. Uhuru, thank you.
Every euro helps.
Yes, every euro helps.
As long as there is a euro. Let's see how long that lasts.
Right. And then we have Comrade Kundai in Huntsville, Alabama with $5. Uhuru, Comrade. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm up to date. Okay, so far, Chairman, we have raised $1,270. Uhuru. And I just got a text that I like. Okay, this is not to Omali Taught Me, but just wanted to say, because you just mentioned him, Redbeard actually donated $500 on the first day of the July Member Fund Drive. So Uhuru, shout out to Redbeard. Continued support up till today. So Uhuru, thank you, Redbeard. And there was another question, let me go.
That's Dave Reardon, Redbeard.
Dave
Uhuru.
Reardon? Uhuru. So there was one question, and like I said, Chairman, I think you kind of said some of this stuff already, but Ra from St. Louis on YouTube commented, Uhuru, Chairman, what's an immediate means of demanding reparations?
If you're in St. Louis, Black Power Blueprint right there in St. Louis, the work that we're doing there, and I think that's a really important question because it gives me an opportunity to say that we didn't just do a tribunal, but we've been working on reparations for the last 40 years or more. And even our participation in the organization that's called, and as quiet as it's kept, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. That organization is 10 years old. And despite that, many people who are on the steering committee of the coalition have just discovered with the congressional hearing, subcommittee hearing in June 19th, they've just discovered reparations. When reparations is the last name of the coalition, and that's no accident. It's the fact that we've been doing reparations work since that time, and it makes itself manifest 1,000 different ways. You can support the reparations demand practically by supporting Black Power Blueprint. You in St. Louis, go there. They just had a work day yesterday where they're clearing out this lot that we're turning into an event space. We're going to turn it into One Africa, One Nation market space to create economic development in that community. You can go to Uhuru Furniture Store in Philadelphia, Uhuru Furniture Store in Oakland, California. You can make contributions. You can participate there because those are institutions that are designed also to get reparations. So there are really practical ways, and you can, there are campaigns that's running for office, electoral positions that our movement is associated with that's based on reparations. And you can get in touch with us following this and find out how you can support the reparations political campaigns where people are actually running for office with the intent to take power so that we can make reparations occur from our position inside the government itself. Uhuru.
So we have Michael Jones is a longtime supporter of BP 96, is pledging $20 today. Uhuru,
all right,
Michael.
Uhuru, Michael.
Uhuru. All right, so we have, so I just want to remind everybody about what you get when you donate to Black Power 96.3 FM. You get a membership card. You also get some BP 96 swag depending on your membership level. As mentioned, you get that bumper sticker, and you can rock that wherever it is you are in the country because you can listen to Black Power 96 wherever you are in the world through our app. You can go to the Apple or Google Play Store, type in Black Power, and the first thing that pops up is Black Power 96. And you can download that app and hear the shows, hear the commentary, hear Omali Taught Me, wherever you're at, in your car. So, and you can rock your bumper sticker. $20 donations get you a cooling headband. Like I said, it is hot out here. I know global warming is real, that climate change is a beast on everybody. So while we're fighting climate change by fighting parasitic capitalism, you can rock your cool BP 96 sweatband. So that's $20 donation, and you definitely get that sweatband. Becoming a sustaining monthly member at $5 per month or higher, and we will thank you with a BP 96 drawstring backpack. Chairman already indicated some of the things you can carry in that, whether you're going to the gym with your sweatband. Or your book, you know, your study materials. Yeah. You got your book in your bag, right? You have all that stuff. You have your spears because you're out there hitting the streets, getting the spear into the hands of the people. You need that Black Power 96 drawstring backpack. So become a sustaining member at $5 per month or higher, and you definitely get that. And there are 3 sustainership levels. We have the Nina Simone at $5 a month. You can become a Nina Simone level sustaining member, which means that every month you're contributing to the success of this radio station. Bob Marley sustaining membership at $10 a month. and then Marcus Garvey at $25 a month. So you guys can support the station every single month by becoming a sustainer today. And again, the premium thank you gift in honor of this discussion we've been having around reparations to African people, we're doing a limited edition 11 by 17 Reparations Tribunal poster, which was printed in 1982. It was the cover of the Burning Spear, and you can have that in your wall, on your wall. So, you know, make sure if you do that $100 or more, you can get that Reparations Tribunal poster. And just want to say how much we've come to so far. Oh, and more people. Allison Haney donated another $50. Uhuru Ali said, I donated another $50 and want a historic Reparations Tribunal poster.
Right
Uhuru. We have Suchas in Oakland, California with $30. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Woo. And we have David in Weston, Massachusetts with $10. Diane Tournay in Gainesville with $10. Uhuru Diane. We have Kitty Riley in St. Louis with $25. Uhuru Kitty. And Stephanie Midler in Oakland, California with $5. Uhuru Steph. And Vince Lawrence in Fort Myers with $100. Uhuru Vince. And Vince was just in St. Pete going through all of those spheres, so I guess he wants a Reparations Tribunal poster. And thanks to all of you so far. The Omali Taught Me goal is it's more than halfway there. We've raised this morning already $1,540 thanks to you, you know, watching Omali Taught Me and contributing to Black Pride 6.3 FM radio station.
To go, right?
So 460 to go. If you got 460 on you, you know, you can just drop that in today. Is there anyone in the room that did not get to contribute that wants to get announced? You can donate online. You can come to the mic, you know, if you want to let it out, let the people know why you're supporting. Anybody in the room before I? No? Okay. Well, you have the entire month of July in order to contribute, and you can continue donating, you know, throughout the duration of the day. You're like, oh, wow, I got some money on me. I want to donate. Well, you can do that, you know, throughout the day. And if you want it to go towards Omali Taught Me Sunday Study, just indicate when you donate Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. Also, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, go ahead and comment how much you pledge. If you can't do it today, but you really want to contribute it to the $2,000 goal for this study, comment right now, say you pledge, I can pay on such and such a day, but I pledge to reach the $2,000 goal for Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. So I'm trying to see if we have any more questions before we close, because we have a few more minutes. So let me see. Jackson says he'll do 5 more. Uhuru Jackson in St. Pete in the room. Uhuru, thank you, Jackson. So let me just refresh this a little bit so that I'm trying to get everything. All right. So that means that we're at 1,550. So thank you, Jackson. Oh, wait, no, you said 5. So 1,545. Might be add. All right. So, Chairman, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say that the African People's Socialist Party has been involved in this struggle for reparations for a long time now. But again, I want to clarify that for the party, the reparations is a function of revolution. And that we wanted everybody to, and still do, want everybody to embrace the demand for reparations. We're not sorry that the H.R. 40 issue was taken to the U.S. Congress on June 19th and a debate happened. We say that that's a product and part of the work that we've done. We think it's extremely important for this question to be out there. But we also recognize that for reparations to occur, it's going to take a revolutionary party that leads this. And the African People's Socialist Party is not just about doing reparations tribunals and reparations demands and reparations hearings and reparations conferences, but about actually leading the struggle of our people to take power, not just here. In fact, our party, I was in an African Socialist International meeting, leadership meeting on yesterday, and the discussion has come up about the party's participation in the reparations march or parade that's happening in London in August. Well, I took, me personally, following the tribunal that we had, I took the reparations issue to London. If they're talking about reparations in London or in England or in most of Europe and parts of Africa today, it's because of the work that we did with that tribunal and subsequent to that tribunal. So I traveled all over England with that demand. I traveled to Ireland. I traveled to France. I traveled to Germany, to various places with the reparations demand and introduced it to populations there. In South Africa, we are discussing how to participate concretely in a growing demand for reparations there as well. All of this is important from the perspective of our party. It is, from our perspective, just like the tribunal was, an assault on the notion that somehow that African people have these separate kinds of existences that we have to fight for, either as something that they call ados. I have no respect for it at all, and I want to be clear on that. There is no integrity to it, and it could very well be, and I suspect it is, an instrument of the intelligence organizations of this country that would throw some idea about Americans, descendants of slaves, and that we should get all the money. Don't have a dime, don't have a quarter, don't have anything, but we're supposed to start a fight now with among ourselves and with our brothers and sisters on the continent about who deserves reparation, and somehow we and the Africans who are in the United States or born in the United States are some kind of separate entity from the rest of Africa, when everything that we've heard and much of what we've heard testified to from this tribunal shows that Africans face the same conditions all around the world. And the reason we face the same conditions all around the world is because the conditions we face are a consequence of the attack on Africa. Not the attack on Mississippi, the attack on Africa that is responsible for African people being in Mississippi, that is responsible for colonialism and neo-colonialism occupying Africa and all of our people all around the world. So we see the reparations demand is really critical as something that's coming from African people everywhere, recognizing that imperialism itself, part of what has to happen, when they're calculating the reparations demand in South Africa, or in Sierra Leone, or in Ghana, and or in Africa itself, part of what has to happen is they're going to have to take the amount of reparations that's demanded by Africans in this country for the amount of stolen value of Africans in this country, and then add that to the amount of value that's owed to Africa, because it's value that they would have had or could have had in Africa if we were there. Yeah. And so it's all of African people are owed reparations, not just some Negro who's looking for a barbecue stand in Mississippi. I just think we should be clear on that. And second, imperialism will not survive a successful demand by reparations, and it shouldn't survive it. Anything born of slavery and genocide has no basis. There's no basis for its continued existence. It has to be wiped out and destroyed, and the planet has to begin on a new footing, on a new footing, you know. So I just wanted to say that. And also, brothers and sisters, I want you to make your contributions to Black Power 96 FM radio station, this member drive. We have responsibility from this Omali taught me of $2,000. We're pretty close to that. We have something like $445, $455, $455.
A little less now. We're at $1,575.
$1,575. So that's what, $425 more. And so you can make that contribution and to our ability to have this radio station, to make it everything that it needs to be, because we're still struggling to make it everything that it needs to be, so that it can speak to African people in St. Petersburg, Florida, and throughout the world. We want to perfect, for example, even the app that we have. It's not adequate for what has to occur. We have to perfect the equipment and materials inside the radio station itself, the studio. And it's a beautiful studio. Anybody comes through here, you can see it's a magnificent studio. And it's something that we built from the bottom up, but we have a lot more to do. We're calling on you to participate in making that happen. So that's effectively what I wanted to be able to say to everyone. I think it's been a good study up to now with the reparations question. And I say that all of us should support this demand and pursue this demand and follow what we call for in that summation that was made at the World Tribunal, take it out, and then reintroduce the tribunal to the world and to the peoples of the world. And that's what we're saying about what happened on June 19th. They're talking about a study. No, been there, done that. We've done the study. This is the demand, and what should be demanded, if anything is demanded of the Congress, is that they unite with what happened in November 13th and 14th at the World Tribunal of Reparations for African People in 1982. That's the thing. That's the demand we have to make. And they say cut back. We say payback. Reparations now. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. So before we close out, I just wanted to recognize the last few donors and wanted to make a correction to Stephanie Midler. She actually became a new sustainer of Black Power 96.3 at $5 a month. Janice Bryant in Philly pledged $10 and said hashtag buy Black Power. Uhuru. And then we have Comrade Omali K. Fing in Houston, Texas, is pledging $25. So Uhuru, Comrade K. Fing. And that concludes our donations that came in for today. So we're at $1,575 for Omali Taught Me. And again, you know, you can continue to donate to reach the $2,000 pledge for Omali Taught Me and to Black Power 96 overall for the $7,000 goal at blackpower96.org/donate. So because of time, we want everyone to know that if your question was not answered, one of our moderators will correspond with you and make sure that the chairman sees your question. This study was brought to you by the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, Winning the War of Ideas. For your worldwide revolutionary news and analysis, visit theburningspear.com. And as mentioned, Black Power 96 Radio, you can access it via an Apple or Google Play Store at Black Power 96 or listen to it online at blackpower96.org. Did you unite with what you heard today and want to learn more about how you can get involved with the African People's Socialist Party? Visit apspuhuru.org for all information regarding how you can apply. Order your copy of Chairman Omali Yeshitela's latest book, Vanguard, The Advanced Attachment of the African Revolution, the political report to the 7th Congress at burningspearmarketplace.com. Start preparing to attend the 10th Annual Conference of the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations on August 10th and 11th, themed Turn Imperialist Wars into Wars Against Imperialism, happening in St. Louis at the Uhuru House on West Florissant. For more information, registration, blackisbackcoalition.org. The International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement invites you to attend our 2019 MPDEM convention. This year's convention is themed, The Struggle is Real. Real science, real revolutionaries, real solutions, real Black power. Come join us September 13th through 15th at 4101 West Florissant Avenue in St. Louis, Missouri, as we expose the ways that Africans are facing genocide at the hands of white power imperialism and how our only solution is building MPDEM, the leading organization in the struggle for bread, peace, and Black power, and reparations to African people. And you can register today at eventbrite.com. Were you moved by Chairman's presentation this morning? Well, you can bring him in this electrifying presentation to your school campus, bookstore, concert hall, and more. To book Chairman Omali Yeshitela for the Vanguard 2019 International Speaking Tour, contact Uhuru Tours at info@omaliyeshitela.org or call 727-914-3621. And sign up for the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise, taking place December 14th through the 19th. The Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise is the annual fundraiser held to support the work of the African Socialist International. The African Socialist International is an organization made up of African people located virtually on every continent, dedicated to overturning the conditions faced by African people worldwide. Due to the U.S.-initiated travel ban to Cuba, our cruise destinations have changed to Half Moon Cay, Bahamas, Nassau, Bahamas, and Freeport, Bahamas. You can enjoy political education on board with the chairman, on and off-board excursions, and more food than you can eat. To book/make your deposits, visit uhurulegacycruise.org or call the travel agent Linda Stern at 732-972-4171. And if you want to further support the ASI and the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise, make a donation by visiting uhurulegacycruise.org. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. Uhuru.